The secret word is ulcer. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejohn. How you doing?
It sounds
Sage?
like I'm coming like live from an airport, and I apologize for that. There was like a very low flying plane flying overhead, and I
I can't hear it
like
at
just,
all.
just as soon as you said go, you were just it was just like it's like that fucking scene by Northwest. All right, what's going on, everybody?
The best part is I could not hear an airplane at all, so you sound fucking crazy.
I mean, I would rather that be the end result. I'll be honest. If I'm going to talk about noise issue,
That's a good point. He brings up a solid point. No, what's up, Sejohn? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm fueled by chili right now.
oh my, uh, you got some gas in the tank, as it
Oh,
were, huh?
as it were, yes. I feel like whenever Beavis becomes Cornholio, but I am Cornpastio. I don't. That's not Podcastio. I am Podcastio.
Hey,
I
you
need
know
digital
what?
tape for my
You know,
household.
I didn't know how I was going to bring it up tonight, but that terrible accent that you put on is definitely the way I'm going to slide into this. I am sitting here a changed man. I am a real boy, Devin.
Oh no! Hold
I
on
am a
before
real boy.
before you tell people that you're a real boy. Just something to get off the table. We are recording on Thursday, September 22nd. This is not a time capsule episode, though. This is
Remember
not.
when we used to hide these facts and figures about our show?
Yeah, I do remember that. But now we live in a very strange world where, honestly, the way that things are tonight, Thursday, September 22nd, 2022, might not be how things are Monday when this is going to release. And I don't want us to not cover something that would have been fucking huge and something that we would have covered, and people to be like, well, look what they did. Look what they didn't do, huh? Unsubscribe from the Say Report. Transparency, as it turns out, is the best methodology of safeguarding yourself on the internet these days.
I don't
Maybe.
think I've ever heard of anybody unsubscribing from a podcast because they didn't talk about a specific event in the world.
Okay, so
But
let's talk about the fact that the night that Queen Elizabeth passed away, the Jeopardy, like Final Jeopardy, was British royalty, and that was recorded like 6 weeks ago. But they still have a thing saying the day that it was recorded to cover their ass. So let's say, like, in this episode, just as, I don't know, an out of the blue thing, we praise Michael Scott of Scranton, Pennsylvania. And then
okay,
tomorrow,
yeah.
it comes out that Michael Scott is like a pedophile or something. I don't want people to think that we still support him when we recorded this before that knowledge came out.
This is something you are so afeared by that you even had to pull a fake person in your example.
Well, yeah, well, again, I don't want to offend somebody. I mean, there's stuff that we could talk about and real people that just suddenly came into my periphery today that I was unaware of, regarding pedophilia and, you know, what might be happening with their careers. But let's not talk about that. There's so much fun things to talk about, like the fact that Sejohn wants to be a real boy, the fact that I am
Talk about
fueled by chili.
just like wait a minute. Well, we are definitely going to move on from it, but we're not going to just like stumble by it. You know, okay place Steph, for us to keep going. I just want to check in.
What was that? No, I'm in a great place, so keep going.
Okay, okay.
No, you know what? I'm not. I'm stealing your Pinocchio thunder. Everybody knew what you were doing. I'm stealing your, I'm stealing your Pinocchio thunder, and I'm saying I'm pissed. I'm so disappointed in myself. It's totally because of my own actions that this event occurred. But do you want to know the first show that I watched as part of the fall 2022 like television premiere season?
If it's a legitimate guess, I'm going to say Walker.
No, it was. Oh God, man! Don't do that. I wish Walker's not back till October 13th. She-Hulk
Okay.
ends, Walker begins anew. And I will have something to watch and complain about. No, actually, I'm really enjoying She-Hulk. No, it was Abbott Elementary season 2, and I've lowered my voice just a little bit because I'm watching it on the down low in this house.
I got it. Yep. We all know about your secret sins.
No one in the house knows about the secret sins, and I feel like I can put them on the podcast because I've recently found out nobody listens to the podcast who lives in this house. I was talking about what I did, the security job, right? I was driving my parents. The reason that I was on that 90-minute time limit, I needed to take my parents to the airport for a trip that they were going on. And on the way, I was talking about Reign Over Me because I guess I'm an asshole in some way, shape, or form. And I mentioned to my mother that her opinions on the film Reign Over Me, like, clocked and were mentioned in the podcast, the Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe, her spin-off Adam Sandler-centered podcast, because of how good they were. Like the fact that she noticed as something borrowed that neither Sejohn nor I would have like even hooked onto, in the fact that Charlie Feynman's mother-in-law is the mother from A Christmas Story, completing the trifecta of Christmas Story actors in the Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe, and also her reward for all of her hardship in that movie. I'm kind of stealing something from the podcast, but if it titillates you, go listen to the Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe podcast. I'm really proud of the Reign Over Me episode.
And I'm really proud of the ad you're doing right now. Keep going.
Stop talking like an NPC from a point-and-click adventure.
Okay, we're going to have that discussion next.
But I mentioned that, and she's like, you know what? I think I would have to listen to this one. And I'm like, oh. And then, which is just the perfect stuff to listen to driving to the airport, she put it on then in the car. And we listened to it. So that's why, like, I have this renewed vigor and, like, excitement about that Reign Over Me episode, but also, like, definitive proof that nobody in this house listens to the podcast. So I could say something like, I watch Abbott Elementary. I found myself with nothing to do over the summer at work, like on my lunch break. So I buzzed through the season. And I got to tell you, I know that Sejohn's a big fan of it. I'm going to say 11 minutes. No, that's too much. 22 divided by 3 would be like 7 minutes. 7 minutes of every episode I find myself really enjoying. And let's be honest, that 7 minutes won an Emmy for their performance. So I think I've hooked onto something that's very good. And as much as I like Quinta Brunson and everything that she's done before Abbott Elementary, the character that she's portraying in this show, I do not like at all. Like, I find her very difficult to watch. And
okay.
And that does not change with, like, the second season. And one of the reasons why I'm going to check it out is this is a show that everybody celebrated. Like, I felt like it had near universal celebration, and for good reason. It's covering a type of story that you don't really see on television right now, and it is from creative voices that certainly have never been given the microphone to tell this type of story. There's a lot of important things going on with Abbott Elementary, but the scariest thing about a series like that is season 2. Because I don't know if they expected it to become the phenomenon that it is. And now the expectations for that show have got to be higher than ever. Especially with Cheryl Diane Raphael. That's not her name at all. Cheryl Diane, I don't know her last name. She played Etienne on Designing Women. I love her. She was the third Dream Girl with Jennifer Hudson and Beyonce, and you know how I feel about Dream Girls. But she's fantastic, and I've always been a big fan of her. But her winning that Emmy has put a spotlight on Abbott Elementary that honestly I don't know if they were prepared for. And, oh, you know what? This beautifully ties into everything about things that are recorded prior to the spoilers for season 2, episode 1 of Abbott Elementary. The stinger joke is someone gives her money to deal with the problem that she's going with. And then in the talking head interview, they say, it's fine. I gave her the money I was going to use to pay my student loan. Because you know Joey B is going to be forgiving those student loans any day now. and is like, haven't they already been forgiven? Like that's a shame, because that was a pretty solid joke before the actual legislature happened.
Yeah, I mean, most would argue that it did not do enough, but
So
I think
I
the
will
joke
argue
still
that it
lands in
didn't
some...
do enough.
Right.
I will lead that charge if people are looking for somebody who can like get a mob together, but doesn't necessarily know where to get the pitchforks, torches, and implements of destruction. We should be a peaceful mob, though. Let's be honest. We're educated. I don't know where this is going, Sejohn. Please bail me out.
I don't know. You wanted to steal my thunder, and I was letting you kind of do your thing. I had a whole bit I was gonna do. I was gonna put on a Pinocchio character, and you were gonna be Geppetto. It was gonna be great, but we're dead now.
Oh no, we can go back to that. We can go back to that time, right? We can.
I don't think. Okay.
Yeah, but that was that. I'm a little first of all fueled by chili, and I don't just mean the chili that like we made for the week and we finally broke out for tonight, because it was very easy for me to cook, like rewarm it up and finish it before recording, and then when Dale gets done with work, for her to just take care of herself with whatever chili I had left for her. Which was fair.
You get the leavings. You get the chili leavings.
I had a lot less chili than I would have, because I also, it was $1 chili cheese coney day at the Sonic, so I had 4 chili cheese conies for lunch today. So pretty much I am all chili right now. You're listening to Chili Devon on the Say Report. One day I'll be a real boy.
He's the chili man.
I'm the
chili man cometh.
Oh, I'm a little nervous that eating all that chili, I'm going to get one of those like painful things in your stomach that like from the stomach acid.
IBS?
No, not IBS. Like
an ulcer?
You said the magic word, the secret word. You just earned $2, Sejohn.
What? Just because I figured out what you probably have done to yourself today?
Yeah, which is more than likely I gave myself an ulcer from all the acidic foods. But also the secret word of the episode was ulcer. Sejohn said it. We don't have a soundboard, so it's just me yelling into your ears. Congratulations, Sejohn. You said the secret word.
We also don't have a setup for this bit before this, so I don't know what's going on right now.
You don't have a setup for this bit. What do you think when I said, Sejohn, I gotta call you right back? I was setting up. Welcome to the podcast.
So are you gonna talk about like your sads and your disappointments, or are you just gonna shit on Abbott Elementary for 20 minutes?
Well, I'm not sitting. First of all, it's only 12 minutes into the episode. I know it seems longer for you. I guess let's get this.
Talking about how much longer you could go, my friend.
Jeez, not wrong. I could go for 2 whole Abbott Elementaries on Abbott Elementary. No, this is no. Let's talk about the sad.
Size or full size?
What? I don't even know what you said there.
You said 7 minutes was about all you could take, so that would only be 14 minutes, which is about what I would give you. So
yeah, that's fair. I'm almost there at the 14. What are we talking about? Oh, anyway. So Sejohn said that I should broadcast my disappointment, which to me says, if you're a cunning listener, that he really enjoyed Pinocchio.
Is that's your disappointment?
No. My disappointment. No, if you want me to purge my disappointment at the top of the show, that means that you want to talk about positive things. And who, boy, but Joby, do I have some important things to talk about with this episode. But, that's what we're going to get to that stuff. Let's start with, so a couple of weeks ago, I sent Sejohn a text somewhere. One of the, 8 places we communicate with one another. It's fun. Right. It's like a scavenger hunt every day. Where is the conversation starting today? And I sent to him, I apologize for my behavior and views that will be expressed on our September 26th episode. And he didn't say anything back, and I said, because Monkey Island comes out the week before. And I feel like that was enough. Return to Monkey Island has come out. The 6th game in the series, right? Because the Tales from Monkey Island stuff, the stuff from Telltale Games, even though it's 5 parts, that's still technically one game, right?
How would you look at... yes. They're episodic and then sold together as a full package, so they're just one game. Yes,
but they were weirdly released episodically, and
right.
I don't know. Each one was about 2 hours to complete. It's strange. But then I think about I can complete The Secret of Monkey Island in 2 hours or less because I've beaten it so many times.
Sure. Yeah.
Anywho,
Yeah, definitely a more robust experience when packaged all together, but I would still consider it all one game.
yeah, that's okay, cool. So I just want to make sure before we go into this. So it's the 6th game in the series, and it's the first game since the completion of the second game to be done by Ron Gilbert, the original creator and creative mind behind the Monkey Island series.
Meaning 3, 4, and 5 were being handled by other parties, right?
Yes, they were different creative teams. I always, what I say all the time is Zero Punctuation did a review video after the first 2 Tales of Monkey Island games parts were released, and he talked about what we've talked about on the show, which is essentially licensed fan fiction. And when you have somebody doing the game, however many years removed, I don't know the exact algebra behind it, but Monkey Island 2 comes out in 1991, and then it's 1996 that they're making the sequel, and it is none of the people who worked on the original game. It's a completely different like group of people, and more than likely, and again, this is all from Yahtzee with Zero Punctuation, but it's something that like really kind of helped me get through some of my issues with remakes and reboots of in cinema as well, is you have a lot of fans of the original product. So then they're hired by whoever owns it, in this case Lucasfilm Games, and they're now getting to essentially write their fan fiction, but with the creative company saying that that's completely good and we sign off on it and everything that you're doing in this is now canon. Right?
Yeah, it's often so this theory, this concept, right, of licensed fan fiction is something that is used as a weapon a lot nowadays. So I want to be very careful in that we're not starting off from that place because it doesn't always have to be, right? Like the idea of getting somebody in that understands the material, when I say it that way, sounds really important, right? Like, oh, we want someone to work on the next Star Wars movie that is really invested in the Star Wars story, as opposed to someone that has no idea where they're coming from. That sounds really great, right? Until you get somebody in the room who is like, yeah, I've never seen any movie but Star Wars, let's do this. And it can be disastrous in that way because it doesn't allow the product to evolve in any way, right? So there's 2 sides to this sword is all I want to say before we go any further.
Yeah, he's right. And I only bring that up in that video because it was one of those situations where I had never truly understood that, but as somebody who played the first 2 Monkey Island games, never knew there was a sequel until I got to like high school and ran into other people who had played the games. Like, what do you mean you've never played The Curse of Monkey Island? It's one of those situations where, first of all, because Ron Gilbert is not invested or a part of The Curse of Monkey Island, the cliffhanger that Monkey Island 2 finishes on is left unresolved. It just
see that's a weird one. Yeah. That's a weird one in terms of saying this is going to be licensed fan fiction, because I feel like any fan fiction worth its salt would address the hanging like thread, right?
Yeah, I mean they kind of sort of do is the nicest way that I can say it, because Guybrush Threepwood, that's the main guy from Monkey Island. I don't know how much about Monkey Island you know, listener. I imagine you know some, Sejohn, because you've been in orbit of Devon Decker for a while, and it just
well, and I've played a couple of the games.
Good,
although but I will be straight up honest right now and say I couldn't tell you which ones I've played. Like it's been remakes and redos over the years that I've gotten my hands on and played those games. So like, yeah, I couldn't tell you. And like one game that I remember being on like a DOS machine in my like middle school that I played.
Yeah. So that's awesome. That's actually something that I've been dealing with kind of all week, is people being like, oh, Monkey Island, I played the one with this. I think it's this game. And I'm like, no, you actually played this game based on what you just described. But it's okay because you still know Monkey Island, so like you know who Guybrush Threepwood is. We can have a fun conversation about the game. And yeah, so the fact that the third game starts with Guybrush in like a bumper car just floating in the ocean, that's their like subtle nod to the fact that the second game ends with Guybrush and the villain of the series, the ghost pirate LeChuck, though he's a zombie pirate in the second game. as little children at an amusement park, leading people to believe that everything has just been the imaginations of a child at an amusement park. That's what the games have been. But then right before the game ends, LeChuck, or Chucky, his brother, looks at the screen and his eyes glow red. So maybe you think that he's trapped in some sort of demonic spell from LeChuck. And then if you watch all the way to the end of the credits, one of the other characters, Elaine Marley, who's the governor in the first game and eventually goes on to become Guybrush's wife, she is still waiting for him after he has fallen into the hole that leads to the finale of it all being in an amusement park. So then it's a question of, well, if Elaine is still there and then on the outside, like, it was a deep cliffhanger that, by all accounts, Ron Gilbert was ready to resolve by making a trilogy of Monkey Island games.
So this is as an outsider, somebody that is not going to be like considered in like the main fan base for this game, right? Like, enjoy my time with it, but definitely am not married to any of this lore. It really sounds like right now what he did was he didn't know what the next thing was going to be, so he just gave himself 3 different possible, as far away, extremely different doors to go out of.
Well,
I can either claim it was all a dream, I can either all claim this particular thing was a spell, or I can claim that none of it was real. Like, he just basically was just like, any out I can think of is just like, oh, it's a magic spell he comes back from. It's his magic spell he doesn't come back from. It was all a magic spell, even on the user.
Yeah, so you're not wrong, and by all accounts, also, it wasn't now, years later, especially after you complete Return to Monkey Island, which I am happy to say I did this morning at 1:13 a.m., which I sent. That's why I sent that to you like 4 different places so that I would remember that information.
I did see the gorgeous screenshot, though.
Yeah, oh God. I mean, the art style was something that was highly criticized when this game was revealed. In motion, it looks wonderful. Like, there's some jaggy parts with the graphics themselves, and the game is constantly getting patches, and it doesn't say what those patches are for. But by all accounts, it is playable, and the art style is very interesting, especially when you consider, I guess, spoilers for the beginning of Return to Monkey Island, which picks up exactly with Guybrush and Chucky in that amusement park at the end of Monkey Island 2. And then, cool reveal, and this is like within the first 1 minute of gameplay, that Chucky and Guybrush are actually Guybrush Threepwood, the hero from all those games, children who are in the amusement park pretending to relive their father's stories of his adventures.
So to be clear, he named one of his kids after LeChuck.
Well, yeah, that's what it seems like. Yes.
just wanted to be clear here.
Or maybe it's just his friend. Like, they don't ever really talk about the brother aspect of it. Like, it's the fact that him and LeChuck are brothers, and that's just a reveal. And it's also, when you guys imagine that game, you always make it so extreme, and you change the facts a little bit. Like, they really kind of covered their asses, but it was super cool to load up Return to Monkey Island. I'm trying to do the math in my head real quick. 30 years later, and where it picks up is exactly where it left off at the end of the
I will say
game.
My knowledge of and appreciation of these games goes just about far enough, just because we're already talking about weird relationships between Chuck and Threepwood, goes deep enough to at least appreciate the running storyline, like not even B plot, more like C or D plot, that's in Tiny Tina's Wonderland, where you meet a dead pirate ghost, like zombie, and like his whole story is about how he loved a man, and you learn through it eventually that the man's name was Guy, and that they had a falling out and a huge fight, and that he wants him back, and it's like this whole subplot in one of the areas of that game, and the entire time I was just like, man, I should go play Monkey Island.
Which is sort of the Monkey Island marketing, is that you're giving something that reminds you of Monkey Island, and then you're like, man, it's time to go play Monkey Island. I mean, I myself busted out Secret of and LeChuck's Revenge to prepare for this. I didn't want to play any of the other ones because I did not know the canon that would exist with them, and I didn't
Yeah.
want to like.
Well, it sounds like you made the right choice.
Yeah.
I mean, considering how this one,
Well,
where this one goes.
When you boot up the game, there's a scrapbook, and it's like basically watch what happened before you play this game, so that if you're some new person playing the game, right, who has never heard of Monkey Island before this game, but you're a fan of Devolver Digital, so you're like, I have to download everything that Devolver Digital does. You can give yourself kind of a quick refresher course.
I'm pretty close to that right now in my life, to be honest. But sorry, keep
Yeah,
going.
no, it's understandable. That's why I say it. Devolver does some great stuff, and it's why I was excited to see that they were the ones behind Monkey Island. Because if anything is going to capture a new like breed of fans, a Devolver Digital published Monkey Island game is pretty much the hottest ticket in town.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it opens that way, reconnects to it, and then the story commences. And that felt excellent. As somebody who has always liked that ending, but never liked that it didn't really go anywhere, that felt excellent. And I really enjoyed that. But then as I continued to play the game, and I just want to give a quick heads up on this. Zach Dyer, he did a podcast called Bored with Friends. That one is it's on hiatus. I don't know the actual status of that podcast, but he is somebody that I met in high school and connected over the Monkey Island games with. So currently we are planning to do something, I think, for his YouTube channel, All the Nerdy Fun, where we are going to look very deeply into Return to Monkey Island. So I'm going to touch the surface with you, Sejohn, so you understand it, but I am going to save some of the deeper vitriolic parts for that experience to commiserate with him.
Keep that misery off our show.
Yeah,
Good.
Exactly. Well, yeah, right. We gotta do what we do here, which is try to focus on the positive of it. And the positive of it is moments like that. Moments like, oh my God, you're starting right from where Monkey Island 2 left off, and you're connecting it very well. Moments like there's a bunch of cute little references to the first two games that really felt fan servicey. Cobb, who was a pirate in the Scum Bar in the first game, he has a Loom button on his shirt because the LucasArts game Loom was releasing in 1990, and they're like, why don't we put an ad inside of our other thing, right? The Say Report would never understand doing something like that. That's completely like foreign geometric calculus to us. And there you can talk to Cobb and you can get him to tell you about Loom again because he still has the button on, and that just like kind of made me squeal with glee. And to be back on Melee Island, trademark, and to release Otis from the prison again because he's always getting himself arrested, and just to see it felt really good. But then as the game continued, and this is interesting because for that to be announced released project with Zach, I played it on hard mode, right? And hard mode is something that has existed in the Monkey Island games since Monkey Island 2. People enjoyed Monkey Island, but they found it too difficult, and they're like, I don't really have the time to play computer games like this. So this is the first time really of creators kind of giving into the demands of the public and offering a light mode in Monkey Island 2 LeChuck's Revenge.
So what is that, like more hints or something like that, or hints in general, maybe?
They actually eliminate puzzles. That tends to be the difference between light mode and classic mode in all of the Monkey Island games.
Then it just becomes like well, I guess like a moving novel, right? Or like a conversation simulator. Like what?
They don't eliminate all of the puzzles, but they eliminate maybe some of the like ones where.
I thought when you said eliminate puzzles, I thought you meant across the board. Like no. Like it's not a game anymore.
So and this game no different as to anything that's happened since the second game. There is classic mode, or there's light mode. And Zach and I both beat it on classic mode, right? We both finished it this morning, early in the morning. So we've been kind of talking about it. And then the discussion was, well, one of us should probably play easy mode so that we know the differences. And here's like an example that I can give you of the differences between the two. So you borrowed a book from the governor of Melee Island, and you want to borrow another book from her, but you never returned that book like 30 years ago. So she's like, no, I'm not going to let you borrow a book from me again, right? That really hurt that you never returned it. So you find a forgiveness frog at the host.
That classic that classic adventure game puzzle of you stole a book from the library. I'm not even joking. There's like an entire bit of Minish Cap that has that whole thing.
Yeah.
But of course, you find a frog, right? Yeah.
So you go to the House of Voodoo and you find a forgiveness frog, and giving it to anybody will instantly make them forgive you. That's what the voodoo lady tells you while you're at the shop. So then you go to give the frog to Carla. Now on light mode, you give that frog to Carla, she instantly forgives you. But in hard mode, she's like, you just give me a frog? You don't even give me a handwritten sentiment about why you apologize? So then you have to go around the island getting enough information to make it feel like a personal, heartfelt sentiment and writing her a message on the frog in order to have her forgive you.
Writing a message on the frog?
Yeah. I mean, it's like a wooden frog. It's not a living frog.
Oh, you did not make that clear at all.
Oh, okay. I realized that. That's why I decided let's try to demonstrate. So like that's an example. Another example is you get a map, you get a treasure map, and on the harder mode, you have to actually follow based upon the particular type of flora that is on the ground. So if it's like, I don't know, blue flowers, then it means go up. If it's like snapdragons, you have to go right. And if it's some third type of flower, you have to go left. And
that's
like
awesome.
That's the indicator in the hard mode. On the light mode, it just tells you like there's just a path and you follow the path on the map.
Yeah.
So it's like an interesting thing to do it. The thing that really kind of sticks in my craw is the fact that the two of the puzzles that really held me up in the first and second part of the game is broken up into 5 parts and a prelude. They are eliminated from light mode, so it kind of felt like they got you good, you fucker. Like they know you're like a puzzle guy, and they're gonna try to make you think about it.
I'm sorry, but you're mad that 2 of the puzzles that you had the hardest time with were not present in the "Hey, we're going to eliminate the hard puzzles" mode.
Yeah, well, it was just like one of those things where, like,
I just want to make it clear that that's
was
what
a hard,
right?
but that was. Well, it's one of those situations where, like, man, that was one of the hard puzzles. That's what caught me up. One of the hard puzzles. Yeah,
yes.
Yes.
Yes,
you're right.
I don't know why you're struggling with this concept.
Right. No, and it's not like upsetting it. What actually stuck in my craw is the first 3 parts feel very good, very well built. And I replayed through those first 3 parts on easy mode prior to recording tonight. My hope was to try to get through the game so that I could report back and be like, it's beatable once you've beaten it. Like it is a very playable game, the same way that like Secret and Revenge are for me right now. But I wasn't able to do it. And the place where I stopped is the same place that I found myself stopping on Monday, the day that it released. And that is at part 4, Things Get Complicated. Literally, that's the name of the 4th part of the game. Mm-hmm. And it's when they introduce an Infinity Stone like search for 5 golden keys in order to open and actually find the secret of Monkey Island, which has been sort of the goal since the very first game, and then it kind of just fell by the wayside. And so that was interesting, but at that point, like, the game starts to feel a little less Monkey Island and LeChuck's Revenge and a little more Tales of Monkey Island. In terms of, like, you have all these places to go, but, like, only 2 of them are important. We just kind of padded out the game so that you would have to explore around. Something to like.
So there's a lot more filler in the later.
Yeah, there's filler
bits.
in that later part. I mean, it's literally just that part, and then the 5th part, it like is just a race to the end of the game. The 5th part, like, you start it and then you're done. You're like, oh, and then the game's over. And I was a little unsatisfied with the ending, but we will keep that secret here. And we will definitely, Zach and I, we've been talking about it all day. Like, whenever we have a spare moment, we send off a little bit of vitriolic anger that we have towards the game. But I am happy to report that after the first 2 parts, I didn't run into any puzzles that were like too freaking crazy. So it is a game that like kind of grows with you. And I'm excited to see what hard puzzles have been eliminated from the things get complicated section of the game. Overall, I'm glad that I played the game. There's a lot of great fan service moments in it, but it doesn't change the fact that, like, on some level, I did end up disappointed right at the end of it.
Mm. Yeah, that's a bummer. I
Yeah.
mean, like, it's such a great project to exist, right? Like, and we've been talking about this for a while now, like, that they don't do projects like this anymore in the video game industry. Like, so when one of them makes it through, you know, the years of like Kickstarter nonsense and getting bought by 5 different studios and handed off, and then finally it ends up in the hands of somebody that does something with it, it's a cool thing. So like I'm just happy it exists just from a historical standpoint. The kind of like interest that every time one of these old games gets any type of like recognition, people go back and check out the old ones and new fans fall in love. You know, this is like when they put that remake of Day of the Tentacle out a few years ago, and like I fell back in love with that game because of that remake. Like I really did.
It. That game's fantastic. I like the original Maniac Mansion too. If we're gonna talk, you know, all Lucasfilm point and click games all the time
Right,
on the Sarah
for sure, yeah. But you know, like even doing some of the old like Don Bluth, Dragon's Lair and Space Ace and stuff like that, like any of those older, style games that they don't make games like that anymore, you know?
Yeah, because it was more of an art form in that moment, and also one of the really strange things is for like a deep story, a point and click adventure used to be where you would go with it, but now there are deep stories kind of everywhere. Like,
well,
like
and there's a lot more for
now. Like,
right, exactly, because there's a lot more forgiveness in these genres like that used to not allow time for storytelling.
yeah.
You know, like being able to do a first person shooter that is willing to take, you know, moments and beats and things like that. You didn't have that back in the day. You know, when it was Doom, when it was Duke Nukem, like your storytelling was thin and only what was kind of in front of your character, right? But you know, like then we're sitting here on the cusp of them doing a full-on PS5 re-release of The Last of Us, right?
It's released,
like,
hasn't it?
I believe it has. I believe it has come out. I'll be entirely honest. It's on the PS5, so you know nobody's been paying attention. But
well, people have been paying attention. They're very upset about the graphics.
People who can't seem to understand that people in an apocalypse would be dirty.
Sejohn.
That's not the one that I heard. The ones that I heard were that Ellie, having lived in the fucking wild and in the apocalypse for all of these, like, what, 2 or 3 years, I think the first one it takes place like 2 years in, like her being dirty is just like offensive to people, and it's just like, what the hell do you think would be going on?
No, the showers were the one thing to survive. That's why we made it fungi people instead of zombies. The fungus people need showers, Siege, and otherwise their entire race will dry up. Literally.
But I think you're totally right? Like these puzzly elements that we see, you know, like out there in the world, in the wild, they've become such a part of every other genre of game that these kinds of genres don't have the same drive that they used to, because it's not like the only place you can get this. You know, been looking back on stuff like The Seventh Guest, and I just got done doing, you know, Inscription. They're not done, but like I got done with a run of Inscription recently. Like there's stuff across the gambit here of things that do definitely still fall into this. I actually think for Halloween this year I'm gonna do it's the one with Jimmy in the hotel that everybody lost their minds over last year. That's like the FMV game of you going around the hotel trying to uncover all the ghosts and running away from this weird ass looking dude in a, like, basically a clown outfit. Dead by Night or Dead by Dawn or something. I don't know.
I don't know that game. That sounds crazy.
Well, Twitch lost their mind about it last year, and so I kind of didn't need to play it.
Phantasmophobia?
No, that's Phasmophobia. That's a different game. No. This was a one-player experience with some FMV elements to it that people just kind of lost their shit over.
I mean, it's early for Halloween, but I am excited to sit down and play the new Ghostbusters game. Even though it's the 4v1 type thing, if we can get 4 busters...
Well, from what I understand, it can even be... It doesn't have to be 4v1. It can even be like 4v4 and stuff like that, because some of the stuff I was reading was like you could have team of
Of
ghosts.
ghosts. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm excited to see what it is. I hope that there's. I know there's not going to be, but I'd love if there was some single player content in some way, shape, or form. There's
Yeah,
probably
I
not.
mean, it's really no, it's leaning more into a from everything that we know about it so far, it's leaning into more of a Dead by Daylight or whatever that one is, the one
Yeah.
that with all the one that they just put like Jason into and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
which
right?
is it's weird because Friday the 13th was that too. But but I guess we know which one's more popular, Fortnite fans. Yeah, it's I guess what I hope for is that if there's a PVE element where it's four people versus the game.
Oh yeah, well so that's what Evil Dead just was that just came out last year, and
Yeah,
and like I am totally on board for that kind of experience for sure.
because that is the thing. The Ghostbusters game that came out in 2009, which every time I say that it hurts me just a little bit. I can feel my hair just turning grayer every time I talk about how old the Ghostbusters game, that I know I've said it before, has been rendered non-canon by the events of Ghostbusters Afterlife. I just told somebody that, and they like blanched, and they're like, "Are you serious?" I didn't even consider that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, no, it has to be because Ivo Shandor is the villain in 1992 in the 2009 Ghostbusters game, but we see that he was out in the Midwest in Afterlife, and the Reitmans were very clear about the fact that this is the sequel to Ghostbusters 2. So there's not even wiggle room for Ivo Shandor to be terrorizing New York in 92 or 91. 1991 is the actual year that's taking place in that game that was now released 12 years ago. Try to keep up, sports fans. 13 years ago, Devon, it's 2022.
Oh my god. All right. A
Sorry,
bunch of
I
numbers rolling
fueled
around
by
in my head
chili.
about a
Sorry, I don't mean to do
Ghostbusters
it.
game.
Anywho, the online portion of that game, while it sucked in the beginning because everybody wanted to be LeBron James and capture the ghost and dunk it into their trap, completely doing away with the fact that if you don't work as a team, you're going to fail every single objective.
Right.
Because that's the game has been built with the teamwork elements of the Ghostbusters at its core. Like 2 years later, I found people online who were like trying to do the online and complete the online. Because also, when that released, the online was incomplete. You couldn't activate one of the flags like just randomly, so you couldn't get to like the entire back half of the online campaign for that game because they messed it up, and they
Oh my
thought
god.
we're never going to fix it. But they fixed it 2 years later. And then I found people, and it was actually working as a team to fight against the game of Ghostbusters, and that felt amazing. And I'd like to feel it again. I don't know how we got on
The
Ghostbusters,
big
Sejohn.
well
I'm
so the big
sorry.
so the big thing about no it's fine but the big thing about like Evil Dead, right, the problem that that game had, I think, is that everybody wanted to be Ash, and that game kind of wanted to feed that. So like allowing, it wouldn't allow you to be the same character that other people were playing, so every character kind of didn't feel unique enough, and there's no like real story to it, so there's no like that teamwork element that you're talking about kind of doesn't exist because nobody really has any, like, they have quote unquote special abilities in that game, but they never felt like they were very useful or very different from one another and all that. So for a game that like it presented this multiplayer exterior, at the end of the day you really did feel like you were kind of playing on your own a lot with that game, which is why I think it did not have the legs that I think they were kind of hoping it would. I'm sure that there are people still out there playing that. Every online game has that core presence, and I hope
Mega
that
Man Powered Up for the PSP. This is a
yeah.
PSP game. It was just announced today that the servers are going offline on November 30th. And the
Wow.
collective response from the Mega Man community was the servers are still active? And I mean, I busted out my PSP, and sure enough, the servers are still active for Mega Man Powered Up.
That's amazing.
Which
Yeah, so like
incredible.
so I'm sure that interest in that will wane and grow and as we go along. I just don't want to count out that game yet because it's only been out for like a year, and as we've seen with something like, say, Avengers, like a game that even doesn't even do well critically can still kind of keep limping along apparently.
Second
And
coming
Evil
of
Dead by all accounts is still pretty well enjoyed.
Second coming of Cyberpunk 2077. with the Netflix series that suddenly made people realize that it's more than just a video game. It's a lifestyle choice. But also, they just released a new DLC, and game journalism across the internet is trumpeting the fact that it is completely a redemption song for Cyberpunk 2077.
I mean, you know, this is we live in the era of No Man's Sky, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the way things go now. As much as you and I specifically bitch about the whole online era of gaming, like this is what it allows, right? Is games that to get a second life when they kind of stumble out of the block. But yeah, so like this idea being that like revisiting these old style of games and these old stories and these old characters and stuff really do kind of give me hope that I will find a video game again that I am desperately in love with. Because like even for all of the good times and really important times I'm having with Inscription, I'm still not loving video games in general right now.
I'm glad to hear you say that, and not because I thrill in your pain, but because I'm sort of there too. Infernax broke me. And Infernax, the game I talked about, probably still my game of the year, unless something amazing comes out in the next 3 months. But honestly, I just don't see that happening based on everything that is laid before me. And it's also crazy to say that Infernax is my game of the year when something like Elden Ring came out and exists. But who's still talking about Elden Ring is going to be my counterpoint to that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think anybody's going to be too surprised Elden Ring's not topping your list right now.
Yeah. Oh, why? Did something happen with Elden Ring?
No, we're kind of currently experiencing the downward slope of the George R.R. Martin fandom, so we'll see how that picks back up. And then you add to that the fact that Elden Ring did not hit nearly as hard as like say like a Dark Souls 3, right?
Yeah, I mean it was a
even culturally like as much as Bloodborne's kind of the bastard like stepchild of that whole family, it is still like expressed like love. like I don't hear people talk about Elden Ring anymore in any way, and I still hear people talk about Bloodborne and argue whether or not it's a good game.
The clamoring for Bloodborne to actually get a re-release on the PS5 with 60 FPS and better and like not better graphics but like higher resolution in the game, which by all accounts should be possible from other things that we've seen happen to games and the enhancement they're getting on PS5. That I hear more about that discourse than anybody talking about Elden Ring anymore. And like I was just thinking that like, oh man, I should probably go back and try to finish Elden Ring. And then I'm like, but
I don't even. It's not even that I hear.
Like,
it's not. And to be clear, I also don't hear people shitting on Elden Ring. Like it's not that it's a bad game. It just does not make the splash that like those games would normally make.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I'm not seeing people play it, and I don't really hear people talking about it. But a game like Infernax, now I know that it was me who effed this up, falling in love with Infernax the week before Elden Ring. But also, I'm gonna give some of the credit to Elden Ring for fucking it up because Elden Ring got like that 1 week delay.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, I need something. Oh, Infernax, what a great game to try out on my Xbox Game Pass. And then I beat Infernax, I think 9 times.
I don't think there's anybody to blame in the breakup between you and Elden Ring. I think you both went your separate ways.
Yeah. I don't know. I wish that I could have felt that way with Elden Ring, but Infernax, man, I still dream of it.
Oh man,
but yeah,
excellent.
That's just
cool,
where
though.
it is. And also, I guess last thing, and really the most important reason why we mentioned at the beginning of this episode that we are recording early, Shovel Knight Dig is coming out on the 23rd, which is tomorrow. Now, I'm not hyper happy that it's Steam or Nintendo Switch that are my choices for that game. Because one last thing about Return to Monkey Island, it was the first game I found would not run on my Windows 7 PC. It is Windows 10 only.
Yeah.
Or Windows 11, Windows 10 or later. And I was very surprised by that. I didn't find that out until Monday when I was in the process of downloading it. And then it wouldn't open, and I went to the forum and I saw, oh, it really is. Windows 7 is no longer supported.
I mean, you have no one to blame in this story but yourself, my friend. What are you doing on a Windows 7 device?
I built my own little computer 7 years ago, and it still kicks ass. Everything that I do, I mean, like my plays of Vampire Survivors do not have the lag that I see from some other people on their machines.
Yeah.
and it's because I got the RAM and I got a very nice video card in this machine that I bought a chassis for $50.
You understand that you don't have to like blow all that shit up if you upgrade to Windows 10 though, right? Like you understand that that's not like
I don't
part of
want
the
to
deal.
pay for it. Like that's
There
where
you
it
go.
comes for. And
There
then it's
it
like
is.
you can use Windows 10 for free, and I'm like, yeah, but it yells at you to pay money every time. And right now, like I'm comfortable with my Windows 7 machine. I don't know, but I have a laptop that runs Windows 10, so I was able to play Monkey Island on that, and at the highest resolution and everything. Like that gaming laptop that I picked up from Newegg, like 7 months after I built this PC. I'm like, yeah, it's a good deal, and I'd like to be able to travel playing Legend of Zelda and have the opportunity to stream while I'm traveling. So let's pick up this little machine. That guy's 6 years old, and it's
How
still
much RAM you got in that little guy?
That little guy is, I believe, also 16 gigabytes.
16 gigabytes. Shit, man, I
Yes.
might need to look into buying something. We'll have to talk after. I mean,
Yeah.
in my new ventures out in the world, I need some new kit, man.
Yeah.
So we'll have to talk shop.
Yeah, no, I look forward to it. I mean, 16 gigabyte right now, knock on wood, is more than sufficient for the stuff that I want to do. I remember when I upgraded this computer from 8 gigs to 16 gigabytes, and everybody told me that I shouldn't do that. Like, your RAM is not the problem. And I bought RAM and I upgraded it, and I'm like, oh, RAM was the problem. Like, come to find out, it did not have enough. I was asking too much of my computer. And now that it has the RAM and the random access memory to actually handle all of my requests, you should see how many tabs I have open right now.
I open tabs even when I don't need to anymore.
Dude, I've never closed a tab. It's 7. No. No, I'm not that crazy. And then it all becomes crazy when you think about what we're running on the computer that we record the Say Report on. But we'll keep that a secret until, I mean, there's a pretty big episode of the Say Report coming up.
Yeah.
We can talk about crazy things like that on that episode. But yeah, so that's the last thing about Return to Monkey. I mean, freaking Shredder's Revenge, which was also released this same year, can run on the highest graphics setting on my Windows 7 computer. The only other thing that doesn't work on Windows 7 is Amazon Luna. And honestly, that just seems stupid out of the gate for Amazon Luna. Because
aren't they
and
just
Xbox Game Pass both run on it. And it's just a browser. So
right, it's just a browser window. What are they doing?
So it's really weird that, like, okay, so it's the same Google Chrome that I just ran Xbox Game Pass on, that I just ran Stadia on, that I could run the NVIDIA Go on, right?
Yeah.
All of this will work in the same Chrome window.
I will point out, I think 7 is the last kind of bastion for old Windows that's being supported, right? Like, there's nothing older than 7 being supported.
And there's not even being supported anymore.
And, well, and so
I mean, it's being
with
supported
11...
overseas, but yeah.
We are, well, though, and that's because there's certain places in the world where consumer protection is actually requiring some of those older things to still keep going. But the thing is like 11 is now a year old, right? Like we're just passing the 1 year point of 11's release, I think in October, right?
I believe so. I remember when it was all announced, and I don't know.
So I mean, with that in mind, the idea being we've passed that point, man. You're going to start seeing more and more stuff, especially because the differences between 7 and 11 just at the security level are just so like immense that you're just going to see everything from just like video games to your fucking like Adobe package and stuff like that are all going to be kind of like, we kind of need 10 or 11 at this point just to kind of keep the world safe.
I'm dealing with that at work because me and my supervisor are the only people on the entire campus who still have Windows 7 machines. And I don't know if you've been using like web-based Office lately, but they just gave it a huge overhaul. Now that I'm thinking about it, probably to celebrate that 1 year release of Windows 11. Like the ribbon is incredible now, all the things you can do in just your email, let alone if you're doing like a Word document or Excel online, right?
Yeah.
And it does not work, like just flat does not work on my or my supervisor's computer.
Yeah.
And it's like this is the time where we need it. Like I've come up against, even at work, like Monkey Island was the first one, and then I came in on Tuesday back to work, so I took the day off to play Monkey Island. Also, it was a good thing because my car was out of commission all weekend. because it turns out my caliper got stuck in the closed position on one of my front brakes.
Whoa.
And I just didn't notice that. So I was just driving around with like a semi-stopped wheel, and just the friction was grinding it down. So I took it in for an oil change, and I'm like, there was a really high pitched squealing as I was coming in today. So like, while you guys have it up anyway, if you could just check that for me. And the guy at the shop I took it to, you could see like the glee where he's just like, I don't know how you drove on it. Like, it's incredible that you were able to drive the car. And like,
Yeah, a car mechanic will always be the first person to tell you how close to death you just came. Like, I had a guy once where I was driving a car and I was supposed to be driving from Providence to Boston, right? So I get on 95. I'm just about to cross the bridge to leave to start getting towards the Boston area, right? And the car just starts like grinding like terribly. So I pull off to the side of the road. I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be meeting somebody in Boston, but also I can't drive my car like this. And it's at a time when in my life when I have a cell phone, but it's not charged. Like, I'm just like, okay, I got to drive this thing home. So I turn it around. I drive it back to the house. I tell my dad what's going on. He goes, so is this like we should tow it someplace, or you can drive it someplace to get it fixed? Like, how bad is it? And I was like, I don't know, Dad. I don't know these things. The mechanic took one look at it by the time we got it to him. And he's like, you know that you have 3 axles on this car? You're supposed to only have 2, but one of them broke in half. And I was like, what?
oh man, broken tire.
And he was like so
big
happy
fan.
to tell me. He's like, and you drove on this? You understand that could have gone so bad for you at some point? I was like, I know that. You don't have to tell me that.
It's one of yeah, he was just like, he was so like full of glee and like telling people that he's like, he'd been driving on it and like without any issue. It was kind of cool to see the caliper so grounded down the way that you did. I've never seen it before. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, was I safe? He's like, if you were braking, you were safe, but you shouldn't have been braking.
Man.
And so I didn't get my car back until Monday either, which was a nice. So like, it all kind of worked out that I'm like, I'm gonna take off Monday to play Monkey Island, and then come to find out, I would have had to take the day off anyway because I would have had no way to get around.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's basically everything there. But yeah, but I come back in on Tuesday and try to use something that I've been using forever, and it's like, this is no longer supported by Windows 7. Please upgrade your operating system. And I'm like, yeah, they need to give us those new computers that they keep saying we're gonna get for 2 years now. I know that a pandemic happened in that time period, and it was like, maybe we don't need to upgrade you during the pandemic. But then, like, someone even higher up in our company found out about it, and they're like, we were told that there are no more Windows 7 machines on our network. So like, the fact that there are, that's a huge security risk.
Yes.
Like, for starters, you need to get that done. And like, I've been interfacing with the IT department, and they're like, well, we can't do it until both of you are there. And I'm like, we're both here this date. And then something always comes up. So I don't know what's going to happen. But I have been seeing it, but this is the first time that it happened in my house.
Yeah.
And it was not cool. It was disappointing to have to deal with it.
I mean, the big push in IT right now is to get everybody to do virtual machines. Like, the dream is that nobody has an actual computer. They just have a box that then can Wi-Fi into a computer somewhere safe. And like, that is the goal with every IT firm that I talk to nowadays. And the problem with that is just like, there's so many problems with performance and so many variables. You know, if somebody has a bad network anywhere along the line in the chain, it can fuck up an entire team's worth of work. Like, it's just not, it doesn't work right now. But that's all they want to do is push everybody to that, like to Office 365, like to do the virtual desktop stuff with Macs now. I don't love it. And like, I don't know if I don't love it because I'm a cranky old man, or if I don't love it because there's inherent issues with it.
I'll tell you why I don't love it. It is because sometimes I want to be able to do things without an internet connection. Is that just because the internet is so abundant everywhere, that doesn't stop the times that like, oh, you don't have internet today, so I guess you're just sitting in your chair for 8 hours check
Yeah.
it every half hour if you have internet again. Like that is like, no, I'd like to be able to access my stuff. Like you're talking to somebody who working on the ocean with Carnival Cruise Lines. I was so like able to do a job without the internet. I incorporated a whole bunch of new safety things and ways to back up things so that like if I for some reason couldn't connect to the intranet on board the ship, I still had access to everything. And I've brought that forward to every job that I've had. And everybody's like, that's so smart. Like to have all of your files backed up on a USB card and on a USB like drive. And I'm like, and then that backed up 2 more
floppy
times.
disk you wear on a chain around your
Yeah,
neck.
of course. Right? I wear it. It's a bracelet. It's a slap bracelet, floppy disk.
Nice.
It's fantastic. No, it's one of the situations where like, yeah, and then that one is backed up 2 separate places. And I outload and make sure that they're all backed up once a week.
And then he splits that list in half, and one lives with Tom Cruise and one lives with Devon.
Yep. Hi. Say hi to Tom
Man.
for me, other guy. But yeah, like it's nuts. I don't know how we got to this either. This is what happens when I'm fueled by chili. Anywho, Sejohn said the secret word, which was ulcer, and the reason why this episode is called Ulcerior Motives. Because maybe you could figure out why this is called Ulcerior Motives, but I'm going to use
because the chili's running the show.
Exactly 2 minutes of this to explain that I was working on some unwritten, unreleased, unauthorized, unlicensed American Dad fan fiction. And the episode title was going to be Ulcerior Motives, and Stan was going to have an ulcer, and in his paranoia about the ulcer, he was going to think that his family was deliberately trying to exacerbate his pain from the ulcer. And then I'm like,
I think I've seen that episode.
That's not, I mean, like, that's just basically an episode. The Roger plot of it was going to be, all right, well, I'm out. What do you mean? I've seen this before. I've seen Stan get some sort of malady, and then he thinks all of you are behind it. I'm done. Does anybody want to come with me? And Jeff goes with him. And you get a Jeff and, what's his name? Roger episode.
Jeff and Roger episode. I like that. Where does
fun.
Steve fit in the mix? Does Steve have his own little like C plot going on with just a couple of visual gags, or is he going to be involved in the Stan plot?
Probably have something, but what him and Klaus are doing off on the side is eventually going to be the thing that pushes Stan over the edge.
Nice, excellent.
And all of this was going to be even more prescient because, for some reason, American Dad was expiring on Hulu earlier this week, and I was freaking out about it. But now that's gone. Now it no longer says expiring. So
somebody was playing fucking chicken with the rights. I bet there's definitely
exactly
something going on there.
Was happening. Maybe it was going to go to HBO Max, right? But no, Hulu held on to it.
Discovery HBO is just going to smother it in its sleep and claim it's for tax purposes.
Oh, man, that'd make me sad. American Dad is the show for me right now. We're 3 episodes deep into their new season, and the episode to like talk about, and which we're going to on the show right now, is Gold Top Nuts. And they're in a plane crash, and they wind up at a lighthouse on an island.
Okay.
And all they have is a commercial for Gold Top Nuts, and they've lost their memory from the plane crash, so they decide to recreate society based purely on that commercial. And it was one of these situations where, like, we were watching it live, and it's like, what the fuck is happening? The family is naked for like the first 15 minutes of the episode.
I mean, this is great. I'm not going to sit here and just laugh at you recreating American Dad.
I'm not even telling you any of the jokes. I'm just giving you the freaking elevator pitch for the episode. Check it out. American Dad is still new on TBS Mondays at 10 p.m. This is not an ad. It's just, if you want to know where Devon Decker is most Mondays at 10 p.m., it's watching American Dad. It's one of the only shows I watch live. I will be honest with you.
Yeah, and people don't do that anymore, man. What do you? I mean, like, what are you, like 60? Like setting up a date to sit down in front of your TV?
Yeah, I know, right? It's very strange. Okay, so you've given me an hour and 4 minutes, and I appreciate it. Let's talk about Pinocchio before I talk about the insane day I had on Tuesday, and then wrap it up with, well, another insane anecdote. So, tell me, my little boy, my little wooden puppet, tell me of your adventures.
Oh my God, I don't even know where to begin. So I'm gathering that you have not yet
I haven't watched
taken
it yet.
in the fucking batshit insanity that is Pinocchio on Disney Plus right now.
So
Oh
for
man,
Labor Day, Ion Television decided, oh, you know those last 8 episodes of Leverage that haven't been released for the first season of Leverage Redemption? We're just going to show them all in a marathon.
nice.
So I taped all 8 episodes of the tail end of Leverage Season 1, Leverage Redemption Season 1, and then my parents were going away, and new TV was starting the day that they left. So 8 episodes of TV is what we had to get through. And I took that weird overnight security job. So all the plans for like watching stuff, we gave ourselves over to Leverage. And what I'm going to say very briefly before you jump into Pinocchio, or if you want to wait, I will have watched Pinocchio before our next episode. Yeah, can I make that goal? I can't because we have all shit planned. No, the October 2nd episode is open, right? Yeah, no, we can wait. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm doing math in my head,
yes.
man.
That's cool. I'm just gonna say make a bunch of agreeable sounds, and then you just kind of cut them in wherever you need me to.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just add them to the Sejohn file. Sejohn has not been a member of this podcast for the last 79 episodes. It is just
you
me
understand
talking.
that if I told you right now that I have been dead for the last 3 years, you'd have no way to not to prove that, right? Like you'd have no way to be able to like maybe he is just a ghost.
Holy fuck, man. I don't need that. Who brings that to the table? What a great
a mysterious
idea.
dead boy that makes you really
podcast.
uncomfortable. Yeah, Pinocchio brought that to the table, actually. It's really fucking weird.
Okay, so that makes it sound like it's more of a remake of the weird Walt Disney one from 1995, where Jonathan Taylor Thomas voiced
and
the
Walter
Pinocchio
Matthau,
puppet.
or not Walter Matthau, what's his name?
Walter Matthau is definitely Geppetto.
No, it's not Walter Matthau.
Yeah,
is it Walter Matthau?
Yeah.
From like Dennis the Menace?
It's Mr. Wilson from Dennis the Menace. I'm pretty sure it is. He definitely played Geppetto,
it's
didn't
not
he?
Walter Matthau. It's killing me because I know the name and I keep saying Walter Matthau. Now I can't get Walter Matthau out of my mouth.
That's the Walter Matthau. That's what I do.
He tastes like old cigars. Anyway, this movie decides that it's going to take some. Okay, so it's a Robert Zemeckis CGI mocap film, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We all are aware what that means, really. Like, there's going to be
That
some
one
weird,
actor
dark
is playing
shit.
every role.
Not that, actually, I will to say that that's not the case here, and was not always the case in the other ones as well.
But
I don't
was
think the only time that ever happened was just Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol and Polar Express. Tom Hanks plays like 2 people,
doesn't he?
He plays Santa and he plays the conductor, and I also think that he's like the basis for the motion of the kid, but not the voice of the kid.
That's weird. That's the first time I've ever heard that Tom Hanks played the little boy. Oh man. I'm gonna call bullshit on that particular aspect.
Okay, I'm just making
this was
shit
not
up,
at all
so
anything
yes.
like that regard. No, what I mean by that is that things are gonna be like uncomfortably animated. There's a lot of choices made and specifically artistic choices made that just feel off-putting to look at for long periods of time.
Someone out there became a man to Grendel's mom in Beowulf.
Well, okay, so that's a different thing, where Zemeckis decides that everything needs to have a little bit of like sexy twist to it. I mean, right, like everything all the way back to like Jessica Rabbit, right? Like there always has to be like an uncomfortably sexy moment too in your movie, and that also happens in Pinocchio. There's
all the way back to the Future, where it's like, I guess I'm gonna fuck my mom if Biff doesn't get here.
Yeah, there's always gonna be something weird with like in that regard too, right? But like back to the whole artistic stuff for like the because it speaks to the mocap specifically and the ways in which he uses certain. I say him, obviously, whatever team he uses when he does these projects is also responsible for this madness. But like Jiminy Cricket in this movie, I don't ever want to touch. It was like he is like the grossest, slimiest version of Jiminy Cricket they could have created, while also still trying to maintain some semblance of like the fun Disneyfied version of Jiminy Cricket that they can still sell toys of, right? It was almost like if you had watched A Bug's Life when it came out, and it had the joy that that movie had, but all of the like textures and animation style that they used in DreamWorks Ants instead, it was that kind of weird juxtaposition of just like you really want me to come along on this creepy ass ride, but it's really more of giving off like a Wayne Gacy like like style like come on this, get in this white van and have some fun with the clown kids. It's like really the attitude of a lot of this movie, and it's just like I don't know how I feel, because if you look back on the old like Pinocchio, I mean specifically the Disney Pinocchio, there's definitely some like horrific elements of that movie, right?
Monstro is terrifying.
Well, I mean,
The animation on
Monstro
Monstro is terrifying. Sorry,
going to the park and it basically being like the like the road to hell, and there's like elements there that are like right. So like the weird, scary, gross factor is not foreign to this story, but oh my god, does it get dialed up the second that you introduce CGI, mocap, real people talking to each other. There is a moment in this movie, by the way, talking about real people talking to each other. It doesn't really happen in this movie. Mostly this movie is just Tom Hanks alone in a room acting to what I can only assume is like a toy car and like a tennis ball on a stick and like whatever things are in place to give him something to motion to, right? That is all of this movie, to the point where they have to make up a moment in which another human walks onto the screen for him to talk to and then walk away, just so that you can acknowledge that this is not just a man going mad in a room, that he is actually a toy maker or a gadget maker is really more the right way to look at it in this town, that he is not just like this crazy old man in like a white room somewhere. And that moment is completely overshadowed by Tom Hanks himself just fucking chewing up the scenery as Geppetto. It is glorious that like the amount of time that they must have just given him just in costume to just do whatever the fuck he wanted on this set.
Is Playtone involved at all? That sounds like he maybe gave some money to be like, I want to just play on the set. I'm a producer now. I want to just play on the set. Look at me, Pinocchio. I'm the puppeteer now.
He like there's clearly moments of improv. Like that is the kind of style of Tom Hanks that you're getting in this movie. There are moments when he gets into kind of his like goofier like Big or Bachelor Party style like line reads of just like I'm a big lanky man and I'm gonna play with that is like kind of what his shtick used to be, right? And then you see some of that coming through here. So that's Tom Hanks, right? That's Tom Hanks as the only real thing in this movie. Everything else is CGI. That's not true. Luke Evans is also real in this movie, and he scares the poop out of me.
In this movie?
We're not going to talk about it any more than that because I don't want to ruin it for you. But also, yeah.
I mean, I'm willing to make a devil's pact with you, where I will watch Pinocchio if you watch the movie I talk about.
If we're going to talk about the other Dracula in the room, the fact that Morbius has been up on Netflix for 2 weeks and I still have not been able to sit through it. I've tried so many times, but I can't do it.
I'm going to talk about Confess Fletch.
Oh, we'll definitely talk about that because of the article I sent you before we started to record.
I'm disappointed.
You know, it's okay. We'll talk about it. Yeah. So I don't really want to go too much further with that kind of stuff because I think there's definitely stuff worth discovering in this, right? I will, however, still just kind of lean into just some of the just choices that are made. There is a moment where there is a montage of other films in this movie. That's what I will say.
How can that be?
Robert Zemeckis.
How can that be?
Robert Zemeckis takes a moment to decide to just and it is really Zemeckis heavy. Where it just is other movies, are really kind of the focus for about 10 minutes.
Right. That is enough to titillate me. What the new Pinocchio was for me is in the Pleasure Island episode moment of Pinocchio, they don't drink beer, they drink root beer.
Well, yeah, they say root beer, but they always say it with a wink, like literal winks on screen, like no subtlety whatsoever in this film, by the way, which is okay, because again, I will point to the source material of it was never subtle. So like that's not me knocking it, but pointing out how obvious it is that they don't mean root beer. And then later on, there is even a moment where he's trying to describe what he was drinking, and he goes, "Well, to be honest, I wasn't really sure what it was." So like he openly admits that it was basically alcohol. So as much as they do definitely tone it down, I want to give this movie credit where credit's due, in that they don't shy away from the fact that this is kind of the stuff that's going on.
That feels like missing the forest for the trees. Again, the people who complained about it. As I think about, I read a comic book resources article today about 10 covers that haven't aged well, and some of the covers they haven't aged well. Any of the ones where Captain America is fighting viciously offensive Japanese stereotypes on the cover, like
Right.
those have not aged well, right? But also, I'm not defending it, they were propaganda. Like, you can't deny the fact that, like, yeah, they vilified the people that our boys were fighting. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
excuse it, but it was
Well,
the
and specifically,
40s.
I don't know exactly which ones you're talking about, but there are even some specifically stylized to emulate like terrible propaganda, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a fine line at what point what is acceptable when you're trying to call attention to something. You know, at some point you're just reveling in it again, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, but these were all covers from the 40s. We're talking like more timely issues. Like Bucky and Toro was one of the covers. I don't the name of that. The Young Defenders maybe is what it was called, but it was essentially Captain America's Bucky and Toro, the original android Human Torch's little Bucky sidekick, and them in one. And like the cover, I'm like, yeah, that's offensive art by today's standards. But back then, I mean, that's what art was. Not to excuse it, but the fact that they are fighting these offensive stereotypes, like that's what it was trying to do. That's what they were trying to show the people back home, not to excuse it. But then one of the other ones that they referenced, and it's one that we were talking about personally, which is why I bring it up, but I don't think I shared the article with anybody. I just think like I read through it, and the best part about the article is the first comment on the article. J. Scott Michael, or J. Michael Scott, whatever his name is, that artist who did Spider-Man 601 with the Mary Jane that has impossible anatomy.
Yes.
That one. He's the first comment on this article, and it's Maz from the IT crowd getting out the popcorn and the soda. Like, just go on. Because they called out 3 of his covers. But the ones that offended me in this list were the cover of any of the Marvel issues. Do you remember Marvel? This is totally not something I expected to talk about. I'll blame the chili.
Like way deep in the recesses of my mind. You'll have to pull it out.
There were 7 issues of Marvel. You might only know it because I showed you them one time, but it was a huge like parody of comics and the industry at the time. Critics called out the guy who was in charge of Marvel at the time for using Marvel Comics as a personal soapbox to like complain about how he felt the industry was going. And literally freaking 5 of the 7 covers are this redheaded woman in some or no clothing. And the weirdest thing is that the one they cited was issue number 6, where she is wearing body paint of the Spider-Man mask. Like, her breasts are Spider-Man's eyes, and then it is the Spider-Man costume covering her crotch, and she's on, like, a swing made of spider webs. And they said the cover to issue 6 is Mary Jane Watson dressed as I just described her on a swing made of spider webs. And is like, well, guys, here's some fun stuff. That's not Mary Jane Watson. That's the character of Mickey from the Marvel stories, stylized for the cover art. And, like, not that excuses the fact that we are 100% trying to sell this issue on sex appeal, but don't say it's Mary Jane Watson when it's not Mary Jane Watson. And
No,
also,
well, and so that what they do is they end up missing the larger point in that she is stylized to make a casual viewer who doesn't know what they're buying think
that way.
that,
Yeah,
right.
like,
So like, which I think is worse because it's not only grotesque in the ways in which it uses the art, right? Like that is sexist and gross, right?
yeah.
But then the ways in which it is then trying to pull in the audience and use and manipulate them by tricking them essentially into buying something that they don't realize that they're buying. So like it's even grosser.
Oh yeah, and this is a book that I bought the first issue because the cover was the Smallville. It's called Marvel, so it's sort of based on the Smallville stuff, except it's from the future, not from a dying planet. Cal AOL comes from the year 5002 back to 2002 to try to save the future from the descendants of Ted Turner. It's crazy. It's like this ridiculous story about just like supremacy of media and everything. It's really weirdly prescient when we look at how like huge corporations are just consuming all they can about entertainment properties. Like it becomes weirdly like prophetic. But that first issue emulates what was that big scene from Smallville of Clark basically crucified with the S drawn on his chest.
Right.
So that's the thing, except it's an M that's drawn on his chest because it's Marvel. And I'm like, well, I'm into it. And then the second issue comes along because this was still when I was going to a comic shop regularly. And I'm like, can you just pull these for me? Like, I'm kind of into it. It's an interesting sort of experiment that they're doing. And the second issue comes out, and the cover of the second issue is that Mickey character completely naked, standing in front of like a front door of a house, holding a video game console and pizza, which is covering up her naughty bits. And I'm just like, that, like, okay. I'm gonna buy it because I like the story inside, but the hell is this?
Yeah.
And then in the third issue, which does not have like a super cheesecakey cover, they meet God, and within 7 pages, everybody is naked, swimming through the primordial ooze with God, so he can show them the first organisms on Earth. And I'm just like, they're all naked, and it's like reading it now today. Like I gave myself a brief refresher on the series because I'm like, that is Mickey, right? The cover is supposed to be the character of Mickey from these books, and I confirmed that. But then, like, just flipping through the pages quickly, I'm just like, oh wow, I can't believe I read this when I was it 2002? So, like 16.
Yeah.
And I was just
so
like,
it was coming out in 2002, right?
Yeah,
like that is when it was. Yeah, so
maybe 2004 is when it was coming out.
Yeah,
but it was
but I mean, like you're talking
2002.
about the Dave Attell era of comedy, right?
Comedy,
like
exactly, yeah.
like that
It's
edgelord style. Yeah, and that being said, it's not that there's not art to be found in that kind of work, right? It sounds like, considering how little I know about it, and I think that this article pointing out these issues and getting characters wrong and stuff kind of says that maybe its sticking power, its message, did not quite make it through. So so it really kind of loses a lot of points in that regard of like maybe the art was worth it.
Yeah, like the better way to write it would have been a character from this issue, Mickey, done up to look like Mary Jane Watson.
Yeah.
Like just to give that distinction. But again, they're not putting that in there. And then the other one, and this is the one that I wanted to spend more time on. I don't know how I got derailed by Marvel. I guess it's because it was a weirdly formulative comic book and me reading comic books in terms of just like, oh, comic books don't just have to be art and word bubbles. Because there's like, the second issue is like a novel. Like the way that it's written, and then there's just art spread throughout it. Sorry. It's the She-Hulk 40, where she is on the cover naked, obscured by the comic authority code thing. Like she grabbed it from it. And then like, it's like, oh my God, it's so exploitive of Jennifer Walters and she's objectified. And we had just talked about it, that like, it's 7 pages of her jump roping naked, but she's moving it so fast that it's blur line. And then the reveal is that, like, no, we were playing on the fact that you objectify women, and that's why you buy comic books. I was wearing clothes the whole time, you horny fucking idiot.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
like,
it's a
weird thing to identify, like, it is sexism, right? Like, in the broadest term, but it's supposed to be kind of calling out the sexism in the industry, specifically that issue. I don't know.
Well, and remember, like, one of the biggest things that you got to remember is that there are certain waves of feminism. I won't say that all waves feel this way, but there are certain waves of feminism that definitely embrace the idea of sexiness as being a powerful part of a female body, right? Like, you know, and then there's, you know, there's offshoots of that can say, oh, all bodies, right, can have that power, can wield that power. They just need to learn what that is within itself, right? So there's definitely a line that you can follow that leads to this being stuff that has to do with empowerment, right? I mean, especially because in light of the twerk that broke the internet, right, is that like there's this idea being that somehow we've gotten to this point where there is a certain type of woman out there that is not allowed to behave in that way because it doesn't conform to other types. Seems to go completely against what we've been learning all along, right? Like, everybody should be able to express their womanhood, their gender of any type in whatever way they want. So when does it become exploitive and when does it not? It becomes harder to talk about and harder to say, right? I would argue that in a lot of these instances that we've talked about here, clearly exploitive, right? Like, there is some pretty obvious, like, this has nothing to do with the inside of the book. This is entirely on the cover just to draw your attention to it. Versus something like, say, the She-Hulk one, where it is at least eventually addressed within the stories of She-Hulk, right?
I mean, it's addressed in that book. Like, that's just such a weird one to point at, especially when, like, Spider-Woman #1 exists.
Yes.
And for that to not be on your list of covers that aged poorly, I guess the only reason that it can't be a cover that aged poorly is that the second it was released and you could see her butthole through her costume, everybody was like, the fuck is this?
Yeah.
But if you're going to say that collectively we all agreed that it was wrong, the Ironheart 15, where Riri Williams is wearing,
is like
15,
a kid,
she's
right?
15 years old.
She's like 15 years old and like in
and
some
weirdly over sexualized. And it's like, that book, the day, like a week after its release, was recalled and they did a different cover for it. Like, they realized, oh, we went too far with this.
Yeah.
And it's,
well, I mean, this even goes to some of the heritage covers that DC was trying to do. What was it, just last month that they released? And they caused a whole uproar because they changed a bunch of the covers over, specifically one, without talking to an artist, and like put like a plastic bag full of tacos in Green Lantern's hand.
Oh my
just
God.
And what's crazier is the original cover was based off of like traditional Mexican art, but I guess like because Marvel was worried they were going to get in trouble with like the Mexican government, they decided that rather than celebrate something like beautiful from that country, they were just going to lean into a stereotype.
Yep. Yeah, that's
right.
been on the back burner for a while to talk about, but it just kind of like came and went. It didn't incense the internet the way that like the twerk did. And then because of that twerk, everybody discovered that issue 40 of She-Hulk, and everybody is kind of dining out on it. And I'm just like, that issue is the weirdest thing to point at. Like, look, she's been objectified before. And it's like, yeah, but that is specifically them calling out the fact that you bought this book because you thought you were going to see She-Hulk naked in it.
And it's exactly what the show is pointing at.
Yeah,
like,
right?
that's
like,
the crazier thing is it's not only the lesson of the book then, it's the lesson now, and they're missing it both times.
Yeah.
Is like being upset about what happens at the end of that episode seems to be completely missing the point of like she helps Megan Thee Stallion like literally defend and reclaim her identity, and this is a huge part of Megan Thee Stallion's identity that she then shares with Jennifer Walters. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's fucking nuts.
It's crazy. I don't know. Loving She-Hulk still. Today's episode, I'm excited for you to get there, because I imagine you're going to have the same reaction I did when one single word is spoken.
Ooh.
Yeah, right? That's always fun. But what we need to talk about before we continue this is this past Tuesday, right? So I did Monkey Island Monday, and then on Tuesday, I had every intention of going to see Confess Fletch in theaters, and then I found out that is available to buy and watch at home for about the same price as I was going to pay to see it in the theater.
Yeah.
And Fletch is one of those movies that I enjoy. I'm not JD from Scrubs about Fletch. I am not Kevin Smith about Fletch. It's the original Fletch with Chevy Chase in the role of I Am Fletcher. I enjoy, but that movie, when I was at like a high school yard sale, somebody was just giving away a box full of the Fletch books. And I'm like, Fletch's Fortune? What's that? And I read it and I loved it. So then to see that Confess Fletch is coming out, which is the third book in the series by, I think Gregory MacDonald is the name of the writer of those books.
Yeah.
That is the name. That's the exact name. I don't know why I didn't have more confidence in myself there. I'm like, sign me up.
Believe in yourself.
And then John Hamm is playing Fletch. Sign me up. And then it's set in Boston. Oh baby, I don't know how I'm not already there. But I had intended to go out to the theater, but then when I found out, oh, you don't have to go out to the theater, I'm like, let's just make a whole day of it. And so I watched Fletch again, and for the first time I watched Fletch Lives, which is, there were 13 books by Gregory MacDonald that could have been the sequel to Fletch. And they're like, no, let's write our own movie.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, though, as why it is not as well regarded as the other ones, right? Or the other one, I should say.
As the first one. Well, it's also, I mean, like, basically, if there was a thesis of this, it's the whole idea of sequels and follow-ups and how you're already fighting against these expectations from people that are connected to that first movie. So it's always kind of an uphill battle in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And Fletch Lives, I mean, the best part about the movie Fletch, and anyone can come and fight me on this, but for me, is the actual investigating that he is doing to try to figure out the whole drug scandal on the beach and how that sort of spirals out into all of the things that occur in the movie. And it feels sort of like a follow-up to Foul Play, his movie with Goldie Hawn from a couple of years earlier, where he is definitely a private investigator and not just a investigative reporter like he is in Fletch. So, like, there's more comedy to it because he's not a cop. He's not a former cop with some tragic backstory. He's just a reporter who, like, sort of winds up over his head, but is always, like, smart enough to find a way through the problems. That's Fletch to me. I don't know what it is.
No, I mean, it's that joyful thing that we've really, really grown to love in the last few decades, but really in the last few years, is that the competent, like, goofball, right? Like, look at the entirety of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right? Like we like it when our lovable goofballs are also actually really good at something, as opposed to the old style of comedy where it would be like the joke was that they were bad at their job, right? I mean, going all the way back to like Laurel and Hardy, right? And,
or
Abbott and Costello, as it were. Huh?
We're plumbers this week. We're barbers, and I'm going to cut Shemp's head off.
Exactly, right. The joke is always like, look at how bad these guys are at this job, is like where the joke comes from. But actually, we really learned that one of the things that we secretly love is watching people that are just really good at what they do, especially when they're doing like a good guy type of job, like in like investigative journalism, right?
Yeah. And he's trying to like figure out where drugs are coming from. And the fact that it turns into an elaborate polygamous scheme with this rich guy, like, it's great. And it's Tim Matheson. I love Tim Matheson. And I don't know, I forgot about the whole Provo, Utah part of Fletch. And it was so fun to rewatch it. And then watching Fletch Lives, first of all, Cleavon Little. That's all I feel I need to say, right? I love Cleavon Little. And I had no idea that he was in that as, I can't even remember his name, Calculus Jones. And then the deeper reveal there. I mean, Arlie Ermery not playing the same type of character you see him play in everything else, because it's still early enough in his career where he hasn't just become the yelling guy playing the televangelist Popov like inspired character is really just enjoyable. And it's Chevy Chase having more fun. But the big thing about Fletch Lives that like stood out to me is the extended zippity doodah sequence. And honestly, if that were the reason that they tried to bury that movie for using the vocal track from Song of the South when Chevy Chase is like dancing down the street in Louisiana in his dream sequence, I'd get it. I'd completely understand if that were the thought process behind it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I watched those, right? And then I'm ready. I had a nice meal. I made sure that I was in the perfect mindset to watch Confess Fletch, and I put it on, and immediately it is not the same as the Chevy Chase movies. It is more like the books.
Yeah, that's been
I'm
their whole like
board.
selling point on it.
Well, it was one of these things I didn't even know it was coming this year. Like,
yeah, no, I didn't know that much. I will say for sure. I had no idea it was coming out, let alone like now.
Like people that I used to hang out with or that I used to like see at shows and stuff were like, oh, I get to go to an early screening of Confess Fletch, and I'm super excited. And I'm like, Confess Fletch is coming out this year, and then I type in and I see that, oh yeah, it comes out September 16th. Well, I need to see it. I by all I want to see this movie, and it is excellent. It is just such a fun film. Everybody who's in it, like Marcia Gay Harden's in it, and she gets to actually act and have a really good time. John Hamm is hilarious. Right? He is so much more than Donald Draper, and to see him
I think that's like the big
play
secret about him is is that he's always been a really good comic guy. What was Bridesmaids was one of his big ones, right?
I don't remember him in Bridesmaids. I don't really remember Bridesmaids. What I remember about Bridesmaids is sneaking in like 4 burritos in my cargo shorts.
Yeah, I
and Wilson Phillips, just so that there's something else. Oh, and also, the guy, Dowd from the IT Crowd. I love
Chris O'Dowd.
Chris O'Dowd, yeah, as the cop and the ugly carrot. There's stuff that I remember. John Hamm is not one of the things that I remember from that movie. I apologize.
I'm so offended. I might not even have that right. You know that, right?
I do, yeah. No, and it's one of those situations where, like, John Hamm has been in the Progressive commercials, and what's super fun about that is that him and the actress who plays Flo, like, they were doing comedy and stuff together early on before he became the Madman guy. Like, so it's super fun to see them together again. If you're, like, a comedy nerd. Which, I kind of am, come to find out. It turns out. So it's excellent. I really, really, I recommend it. I really enjoy it. What is this article you sent to me, though?
So the movie was really in danger of not getting made. Like, it was one of those ones that I mean, like, it's from what I understand, somebody's been trying to get a new Fletch movie off the ground for a while, and the intention has always kind of seemed to be we want to really do the books justice. Like, that was always kind of part and parcel with it, and probably part of the reason why it was not getting made is everybody was like, we want to bring Chevy Chase back, and they were like, well, probably not that, and they were instantly not interested, right? Yeah. So there's this whole
Kevin
idea.
Smith's with Jason Lee. Like,
yeah.
Fletch 1, right? What's what that was going to be called?
But
Sorry.
In that there was a huge financial burden at some point, and so John Hamm straight up apparently like gave back like 60% of his pay for this movie just to make sure it got made. So like just to like it was just one of those like totally like a feel good marketing thing for them to put out the week the movie is out, but also like just to show you how invested in like getting this movie made, get people involved like John Hamm were.
That's excellent. It's so good. And I hope it does well because it sets up at the end for the adventure Fletch's Fortune, which is, the one that brought me into this character on a deeper level, right?
Yeah.
So it's really good. I was super impressed by it. And I miss movies like that. Like just enjoyable sort of escapes from reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like still grounded in reality in that way. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like I like a Marvel movie, I understand it, but like it's so fantastic. But it felt like if I were in Boston at any given moment, I could walk past Fletch.
What it really feels like is it feels like what would normally be an indie movie nowadays, right? Like
Yeah.
this wouldn't get off the ground with guys like John Hamm in the starring role. Well, maybe the guy, he's definitely done his fair share of indie film too, but this idea being that like if it's not like a big AAA picture anymore, then it's not going to feel like this. It's an interesting film for them to be putting out right now. I'm curious to see how it does in the long run, because if it really kind of reinvigorates like the mid-tier like comedy genre, like I'm totally down for that.
That'd be incredible. What it reminded me of is 2014's Life of Crime, based on the prequel novel to Rum Punch, what would become Jackie Brown, just like to try to write everything down and
Yeah,
show my
yeah.
work.
So Elmore Leonard all the way down. Is that what we're
Yeah.
doing? What right now? Okay.
I can't remember the name of the book. Like The Setup or something like that is the book that Life of Crime is based on, and
Okay.
it's Lewis and it's Mo. So Sam Jackson and Robert De Niro, the first time that they run into each other and meet and decide we should do crime together.
We should do crimes.
And that book, Dan Schechter is the person who directed that film, and that is one of those ones because it's I don't remember who plays the Lewis role, but it is Mos Def after he started using the his actual name or his Muslim name. I can't remember what that is right now.
I can look it
like
up
Yasser.
if that's what you're asking me.
Yeah, if you, it was right after. It was like his return to acting, playing the role of the Samuel Jackson, and Jennifer.
I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but Yassine Bey.
Yassine Bey. Thank you. I don't know. All I could think of is Yasser, and I can't remember his last name now, from Black Monday, because he showed up in Clerks 3, and it just made me so happy. Yassir Lester is who I'm thinking of. But yeah, Yassine Bey, formerly Mos Def, and big fan of his work. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is one of the only things that makes that terrible movie bearable. Be Kind Rewind, the what he does in Be Kind Rewind, especially when you compare it against something like his Ford Prefect in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, is incredible. Yeah, so he's playing a young Sam L. Jackson, and Dan Schechter was like not quiet about the fact that like I am making this as its own thing, but I also want it to kind of feel like they're going to grow into those characters.
Yeah.
But then Jennifer Aniston is in that one, and Isla Fisher, and that is exactly what Confess Fletch felt like to me. Like it triggered all the same parts of my mind in terms of just joy. So like check out Life of Crime. I'm pretty sure it's on HBO Max right now. If it's not HBO Max, then it's Netflix. I know that it recently came to one of the streaming services, and HBO Max just seems right because of everything else that I know about the film and its release schedule. It's excellent. It is such a good movie, and it will give you a deeper appreciation for something like Jackie Brown, which I always say is my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie, and people kind of give me the side eye for that. But I mean, first of all, I love Elmore Leonard, and I'm not going to apologize about that. And then what he was able to, what I really like about Jackie Brown is seeing Quentin Tarantino have to adapt someone else's work and not just to get to play in his own playground. And I think one of the reasons why his work after that, like as much as I like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, his work after Jackie Brown, it really sort of galvanized him as a screenwriter in terms of how to tell a story, having to adapt someone else's work. And that's
he has a collaboration streak for a while there between doing Dawn of the Dead with Robert Rodriguez, True Lies, which he works with Oliver Stone on that one, right?
Yep.
Not True Lies, Natural Born Killers. Sorry.
Natural Born Killers, yeah.
Yeah. And then this one in which he's using Leonard's work, and no doubt, like he picks stuff up from all of that work that he does. Yeah. I mean, everything from the silly ass gore of Rodriguez to fucking just some of the like delightful character work that you get from Elmore Leonard, and then like finally just some of the grandiose auteur assholery that he must have picked up on Natural Born Killers. But yeah, he really elevates himself by the end of the 90s working with all of these other artists.
I mean, if you don't have Jackie Brown, I don't think that Hateful Eight or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood are half as good as they are.
I don't think that Django Unchained is half as good as it is without the work he does on Jackie Brown.
Yeah.
Because like the whole ways in which Jackie Brown like purposefully plays with like some of the like exploitation like narrative and character work and stuff like that is just like, yeah, no, I for sure.
Yeah, it's just, and everybody gives me that look like, oh, Jackie Brown. And I'm like, yeah, it's always been my favorite. And that's because I really like to judge directors by their third feature film. But that's another story for another day. I'm sure we will get to that sometime. But I need to make a confession again here on the podcast, which I know no one in the family listens to. I overdid it on Monday.
Oh,
And I need to share
dear.
this story with somebody.
Hope you're okay, bud.
Oh, I'm fine. It's not like I still know how to drink. I know the right way to like make sure you're hydrated. It's not like I woke up dehydrated or anything like that. But I have some friends who are moving out to Indiana, and their initial plan was to come back this coming weekend. It's one of the other reasons why we're recording this early, so that I would have Sunday free, because that seemed to be their only free day. They'd be coming in on Saturday, they'd be free on Sunday, and then they'd have to pack up and be gone. Everything would need to be gone for them to leave on Monday. So basically,
Yeah.
I'd be spending my Sunday helping them move. But, you know, they're leaving, right? They're leaving to go live in a completely different state. And their timetable got moved up a week. So they came in on Saturday, which I was unable to see them because last minute I took that job that had me out until 8 a.m., right?
Yeah.
And then on the Sunday, they're like, well, this is the day that we're doing all the packing. And then so Monday we can see you once we get everything done. Like, we're packing everything up, but we should be done by like a regular time. And
No ties. That was the first mistake. You got yourself involved with somebody that was going to have no reason to stick around.
yeah, exactly.
Nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. So what we ended up doing, and it seemed like it, and this is one of my first like real ventures out into the real world again, right? In like this post-pandemic. Joe Biden said it's over on 60 Minutes, so it must be true. It's not 100% true when you look at some of the things that us still being in a pandemic and the protections that it offers to people, but that's not really what this show is about. But it's something to know about, right? It's something that happened in the 4 days since we last recorded, was that 60-minute interview with Joe Biden that like kind of blew up the country in some weird ways about like what it means for us to be past the pandemic from the mouth of our like leader, right?
Right.
Also, I love that in Britain, every channel covered the Queen's funeral except for Channel 5, which showed the Emoji Movie. That's just a fact.
Was it just going to be something for the kids to watch
like,
while everybody else was crying or something?
But
Like,
it's
what was
the Emoji Movie of like, oh, put on Paddington. Though, of course, he was busy.
It's a movie about feelings, Devin.
It's a movie where Sir Patrick Stewart is a piece of shit.
Maybe it was the Queen's favorite movie. You don't know.
Maybe it was the Queen's favorite movie. I wouldn't be surprised to find that out. But back to everything. So like that's my first thing out. So we went out to Cello's on the Waterfront. We had this lovely seafood dish, and I have been craving a pina colada, Sejohn, since 2017. And at the Cello's on the waterfront,
go out and get you some.
And Cello's on the waterfront, they had pina coladas. So I got a pina colada, and we all sang a little bit of Rupert Holmes's Escape. Rupert Everett, he was married to Madonna in that weird movie where he was a homosexual but got her pregnant. Is the next best thing. That's the name of the movie. Not, I don't know what's happening.
You're losing the thread, Dev.
I'm
We're at
losing
the end of the episode.
So
you gotta make it.
So I get a pina colada, and we sing a bar of Escape, right? The Pina Colada song, which that song's fucked up, right? We can all agree that, like, it's fun to sing the chorus, but if you listen to the verses, hooba juba. Of course Rupert Holmes wrote that. So we sing a bar of that, and then it's like, oh man, it's our last night here. We should go find karaoke somewhere. So we find karaoke at this little spot, and we go. Now, I should have known that something was up as soon as we arrived, because there were two topless dudes just punching each other on the patio.
Not even inside. I thought you meant like on stage or some shit. I was like,
No.
oh, you walked into like a bachelor party or something.
No,
All right.
like that, but
All
no,
right.
it was on the patio as you're walking up. Two guys, no shirts, just going at it. And then the only thing that stops them from their bare knuckle brawl is a car accident that happens in the parking lot. So we
Okay.
walk into the bar as everybody is walking out of the bar to see what's going on. On the TV over the bar is Thor.
I feel like you walk into the bar in this story, and it has to be that one from the Muppet movie that Fozzie is in.
Waka waka. No, it was cool. They had like toys on the wall and stuff, like all sorts of collectibles. They had a very expensive Deadpool figure just up behind the bar doing the Home Alone face, and I'm like, that's
Nice.
a very expensive Deadpool figure. Standing next to a very expensive One Punch Man figure. So as everybody's leaving it, we go and we get nice spots at the bar, have some big loose cannons, which like so many of my stories of bar times in Coventry, Rhode Island, or adjacent areas start with me having a too big glass of loose cannon from Heavy Seas. And we sing some karaoke, and I don't know if you've ever seen Single Parents, but there's an episode of Single Parents where the young girl Sophie, her mother is there, and her mother is kind of like laissez-faire, no rules. So she just overindulges on like cookies and cake and ice cream and everything. So she has like a huge sugar tantrum and then a sugar crash. That's how I felt. Like it was my first time back out in the world. I was doing all this stuff, talking to people. People are buying me shots, and I'm still drinking water. I was like good to go. But then like I sang Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley, and I could literally feel myself turning into a pumpkin.
And then the clock struck 12. Oh man.
No, I got out of
Well,
there.
I'm glad that you at least noticed it in the moment. You know, too many people notice it a little too late.
Oh, I mean, and I feel bad about this. I've talked to them since, and I apologize for it. I just Irished goodbye.
Oh,
I'm like, I
nice.
cannot. I have to go. It's like I should have left the shoe behind just in case. It was just like one of those situations where I'm just like, oh, if I don't leave now, I'm never gonna go home again. Like,
I will live here. I live here now. This
Like,
this
it
will
was
become
a
my
great
new home.
bar. It might be where we go when you're in town sometime soon, because there's going to be a Monday and there's going to be karaoke. I know those are like two of the things you want in a place.
I mean, as long as there's good drinks, it feels weird enough to show off to people. Then there's karaoke to be had. I am down.
Yeah. So we'll have to talk about that off mic there. But it was just one of those situations where I'm just like, oh man, I'm overdoing it. I am overdoing it tonight, and that is.
You know what that's called, Dev? That's called maturity. That's called growing up.
Yeah, that's true. I drank.
And you didn't find
64
yourself
ounces.
turning into a real jackass.
Oh my god! Pinocchio reference. Oh man. All right. So I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about. Shovel Knight Dig will be explored. I feel weird not playing it, right? Even though it's like a roguelite and all that other stuff, it's Shovel Knight. How much time did I give to Shovel Knight in my life?
I want to hear your. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on it. I was actually checking out the puzzle game the other day. You mentioned that I should be checking it out, and I have not bought it yet.
One. Yeah.
Yeah, but I want to see this one too. I want to see where this one goes. You know, they've made quite a franchise out of this whole thing. This little Shovel Knight fella. I don't know if you heard of it yet, but I'm excited to see where they go with it next.
Well, I mean, the last game that Yacht Club Games, well, no, they didn't, because the last one is Pocket Dungeon. But the one before Pocket Dungeon was that Cyber Shadow, and we all know how deep a hole I went on Cyber Shadow. So I'm excited. They do know a good game, and though this one is like in conjunction with someone else, and they're just kind of publishing it, I am still excited to see what it's going to be. But mostly what I'm excited for, in like the weirdest way, is that it's Shovel Knight going from an 8-bit game to a 16-bit game. And if there's not some nostalgia locked in that transition for a character, then I'm just lying, right? I'm just cooking my shoes in the dryer for fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be, like I said, it's gonna be really cool to see what they do next. I'm very excited.
Yeah, and I'm excited for Mina the Hollower too, which is their other game that they're working on. I got all of this information from the TV channel G4, which is just imploding right now.
And Back from the Dead, apparently.
Back from the Dead last November,
Yeah.
and in the last 2 weeks, huge layoffs all across the company. Like
Wow.
it's a trip, but it's not something that I'm equipped to talk about on this. But I put it on last night because everything else was like baseball or things that I didn't want to watch. They do show reruns of that show Starcade. You remember Starcade?
We're not going down a G4 hole
We're not
now
going
at
down
the
to
end of the
G4
episode.
I promise that. But check out Starcade if you get the opportunity. That's my bonus assignment from this week's episode of the Say Report. Perhaps you could call it my ulcerior motive.
I'm done. We're
Anything
good.
else to add? You're good. You don't.
If you want to yell at Devon, you can find him on Twitter at Devon D. Decker.
Yeah, unless you live in the house, then just yell at me face to face. Don't yell at me on Twitter. If this is the episode you listen to. If you would like to advise Sejohn of other games that are similar in the experience of something like Inscription or like a point-and-click adventure but without any pointing or clicking, he is available on Twitter at Siege versus the World. I don't know. That seemed pretty good.
I don't throw it at Will. You do. Why do you always wait for me when it's your turn?
Maybe you're going to have a response to what I said. Anywho, thank you so much for listening. We will be back with a regular episode after this. Will, bring us home. Love you all. Peace out.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.